Day 205, Isaiah chapter 35 and 36. Hello, and welcome. Thank you for taking these few moments to slow down, breathe, and listen for God's gentle whispers through His Word. At first glance, these chapters seem very different. One paints a breathtaking picture of hope, restoration, and joy. The other tells the story of fear, intimidation, and uncertainty, as Jerusalem faces a powerful enemy. Yet together, they remind us of one profound truth. God prepares our hearts with promises before He allows us to face life's battles. God can make your wilderness bloom. The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. They will see the glory of the Lord. There are seasons when life feels dry. You keep showing up, you keep praying, you keep working. Yet nothing seems to change. Isaiah reminds us that God specializes in places that appear lifeless. Notice something beautiful. The desert doesn't make itself bloom. God causes it to blossom. Sometimes we place enormous pressure on ourselves to fix everything, to repair relationships, secure opportunities, heal our emotions, or create the perfect future. But there are seasons where our greatest assignment is simply to remain rooted, while God does the growing. Perhaps your wilderness today is your career. Perhaps it's your family. Perhaps it's your health. Perhaps it's waiting for doors to open. The promise isn't that deserts never exist. The promise is that deserts are not permanent when God is present. Ask yourself quietly, where have I mistaken a waiting season for a hopeless season? Strengthen someone before they give up. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear, your God will come. One of the greatest ministries today is encouragement. People are carrying invisible burdens. The colleague who smiles every day may be exhausted. The parent who appears composed may be overwhelmed. The friend who says I'm fine may simply be surviving. God tells His people not only to be courageous themselves, but to strengthen others. Sometimes your greatest act of faith isn't giving advice. It's reminding someone that God has not forgotten them. A text message, a phone call, a prayer, a listening ear. Hope grows when it is shared. Today, ask God, who needs encouragement from me today? Stay on God's pathway even when easier roads appear. And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. Life constantly offers shortcuts, compromise, dishonesty, bitterness, revenge, taking control instead of trusting God. Yet Isaiah speaks of another road, the way of holiness. It's rarely the quickest path, but it is always the safest. Walking God's way doesn't mean life becomes effortless. It means your direction remains secure, even when circumstances become uncertain. Every ordinary decision shapes the road you're walking. Integrity when no one notices. Kindness when it isn't returned. Forgiveness when resentment feels easier. Holiness isn't about perfection. It's about choosing God's direction one step at a time. Which road am I choosing today? Not every loud voice deserves your attention. The Assyrian commander stood outside Jerusalem's walls and spoke loudly. He mocked their faith. He questioned their leaders. He planted seeds of fear. His strategy wasn't simply military, it was psychological. He wanted God's people to surrender before the battle even began. That strategy hasn't disappeared. Today's voices come through headlines, social media, negative opinions, comparison, fear-filled conversations. Some voices constantly whisper, "It's too late. You'll never recover. You aren't good enough. God won't help this time." Fear often speaks with confidence. Truth speaks with authority. Learn to recognize the difference. Not every loud voice deserves a place in your heart. Ask yourself, which voices have been shaping my thinking more than God's word? Sometimes wisdom sounds like silence. But the people remained silent and said nothing in reply, because the king had commanded, "Do not answer him." This verse is surprisingly powerful. The people heard every insult, every threat, every accusation, yet they remained silent. Not because they were weak, because they were wise. We often believe every criticism deserves a response. Every misunderstanding needs defending. Every online comment needs correcting. But sometimes peace grows where arguments stop. Silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is trust. Sometimes God fights battles we lose by trying to win them ourselves. Before responding, ask, will my words produce peace or simply prolong conflict? There is strength in restraint. Faith grows strongest when circumstances look weakest. Isaiah chapter 35 ends with singing, Isaiah chapter 36 ends with uncertainty. One chapter celebrates restoration. The next introduces crisis. Isn't that how life often feels? One week brings answered prayers. The next brings unexpected challenges. Yet God's promises do not expire, because circumstances change. Jerusalem had not yet seen deliverance, but God was already writing the ending. Sometimes we assume God's silence means God's absence. Isaiah reminds us otherwise. Faith is choosing to believe God's promises while standing in the middle of unanswered questions. The story isn't over simply because today's chapter feels difficult. God has always been faithful, and He remains faithful still. As you go into your day, may you remember that the same God who makes deserts blossom is also the God who stands with His people when intimidating voices surround them. May your heart remain steady, may your faith remain anchored, and may you find yourself listening more closely to God's whispers than to the noise of the world. Thank you for listening. Until next time, may the peace of God guide your steps, strengthen your heart, and remind you that no wilderness is beyond His power to transform.